Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hola, sisters. So, thank you for joining me on another visit to videos from 10 years ago. SubhanAllah. Here we have another talk. This one has my husband and I. We were talking about youth and raising children in Islam. So, the previous video, I had talked about my birthing experience, and the video that I was reviewing, I guess it was my attempt to contribute to the conversation in parenting, real parenting, once the baby's born and the photo shoot and the parties and it gets real. That talk was me trying to encourage, reminding myself first that we teach and nurture our children, that we are present with our children, that we raise our children. We don't use them as props for social media. We don't look for them to define us, validate us. We cover them. We try our best to be good examples. And we try our best to prepare them to be an asset to this world, to be a contributor to this world and not a liability, not a burden, not just on ourselves, but on society. In this talk, this one has my husband and I. During this time, we have three teenagers. My oldest was about 17. My youngest was 2. I am just a few years into Islam at this time. And I'm trying to find out, how do Muslims cope with real life problems with these teenagers? And at the time, all that I was finding was, I'm perfect, take them to Quran class. If something is wrong with your child, it is you are too strict. And not to offend anybody, they were usually by foreigners or maybe first generation. And I'm looking at like, I am 2 days from the days of Jahiliyyah. I can't afford to gamble with my child's life. And these people don't know what they're talking about as far as giving advice to urban, Black and brown Muslims here in the West, here in America, at least here in LA County, or I would even include Chicago. I would even include any urban area where, you know, we're not somewhere where there's middle class. We're not in a. So anyways, I was just not finding that. I was actually finding the opposite. I was finding guilt. I was finding it must be something that you're doing that's wrong. So alhamdulillah, my husband and I, 10 years later, alhamdulillah, we stuck to our guns. Alhamdulillah, our kids are, we're still raising children. I now have another 17-year-old and my baby is 12, alhamdulillah. My 3 adult children, alhamdulillah, they are well. My sons have jobs, alhamdulillah, rabbil alameen. They have their own jobs. They have their own apartments. Without telling everyone's business, my children have been married, divorced. I have grandchildren. I have bonus grandchildren. I have children-in-laws who I love. And alhamdulillah, I hope to be able to contribute and share and make myself available for sisters who need help if they have any type of struggle in the area that I'm familiar with. And the struggle with raising children, period, is difficult. And trying to raise your children to be Muslims is even more difficult. And forget it if you ask the wrong Muslims. I don't know if you hear that car. Sorry about that. Forget it if you ask the wrong Muslims with the best of intentions. They're going to tell you, oh, let them figure it out. They don't understand. Some of us where we've come from. They don't understand that we cannot afford that. They cannot, when you have a Muslim family, when you come from a Muslim majority, I know they have their own struggles and no one is perfect. I'm saying a difference. When you come from a Muslim majority family and you have uncles, aunties, I could send you back home. Every other person you are around has some sort of level of deen. That's a big difference from some of us who we might be the only Muslim in our children's lives. Uncles and aunties might be, alhamdulillah, loving. However, Christians, tatted up, drinking alcohol. So we're asking the wrong people for advice. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but at least I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. If your kids are tripping, if your boys and your children are interested in the opposite gender, all that, I'm just going to share with you things that worked for us. Things that worked for us. And the one thing that I'll say is, even if I give any examples as to what we did and what worked for us, it doesn't mean that you have to literally try it step by step. So long as you get the point that what I'm trying to convey is we try our best to utilize Islam. And so it's going to look different for us than it might look for yourself. It might be the same. It might be irrelevant, So let me start this before I keep ranting. So this is my husband and I. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm not going to play a lot. I'm just going to go over a little bit of what we kind of discussed. The Muslim youth, encouraging that we keep the basics, the prayer and the pillars. We remind ourselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he tests those that he loves and that our children are a test. Okay. We also, I'm not sure if it's my husband that mentions it, that we are our children's teacher. Yes, we enjoy them, we love them, but we are entrusted with them to nurture them and to teach them. There's different levels. You don't have a 2-year-old and you start to teach him how to pray directly. You don't. There's different levels, but our job is to nurture them, to teach them, and to prepare them to contribute, to be able to get out in the world, and not just to be able to fend for themselves and pay bills. That is all well and good. But you want to make sure that when your child is sad, when your child faces a challenge, that they know how to utilize the tools of Islam. They know how to pray. They know how to fast. They have an understanding that when things happen to them, it's not personal. It's a test from Allah. They have an optimistic, an optimistic, they think positive of Allah. They think positive of Allah. And then they also think positive of themselves despite of circumstances and challenges. That you don't raise your children, you don't think to yourself that you have a great child just because they have this 6-figure income job and they live in Baldwin Hills, which that's beautiful. But if they don't pray, if they commit zina, if they're dishonest, who cares? I'd rather my children flip burgers and be honest, good, pious people loved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than someone who just looks good on paper for society. So, and we can have both. The goal is, success in this life and in the next. However, the aim is Jannah. The aim is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So in knowing that Allah tests those that he loves, we know that whenever we're tested is not out of hate. When it comes to our children, we need a lot of patience. We need to, as a parent, you need to be aware of what you're doing. You need to be aware of what image, what habits, what things you are demonstrating to your children. You can't tell your children to pray and you don't pray. You can't tell your children to be pious and honest and you are not. So let's see. I think I wanted to share something my husband may have said here. Let's see.
On the side of me, waiting to jump in. So I gave a couple tools. I'm gonna let her give a couple tools also.
Hold on. Because I don't think I had many gems to drop. I think my husband kind of, let's see. Let me see. Think here. Then, just someone who has arrogance, that's not empowerment. And that's what Dunya teaches our children. Do you be selfish? You're awesome. You're great. It doesn't attribute anything to Allah. It doesn't encourage our youth to give credit to Allah. It's all about you, you, you. You're so great. You're so wonderful. You're so smart. You deserve it all. You know, or then we have the obvious music that it 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 teaches they teach children to just use their bodies as, lustful lures. I mean, we've been to the club, nobody's having mindful conversations when the song comes on, and I think I had something else. Let's see. I wrote this down. Let's see.
My wife is on the side of me, waiting to jump in. So I gave a couple tools. I'm gonna let her give a couple tools also.
No, I mean, we can still talk together. Um, just taking forever. Um, yeah, no, I totally agree with the music, and this is coming from two people who absolutely love the music.
Hmm.
Like I was into music. I used to sing, and not only, hold on one second. Not only did I used to sing, but I come from a religion that music is a form of worship, Christianity. So um, at the end of the day, being Muslim, and so I must have written the wrong time step down, but I know at some point in this talk, we talk about fitna, music can be a fitna. We talk about even 10 years ago, how masculinity is being promoted in young girls, women having a pit bull, little young girls having a pit bull, cocky type of arrogant attitude. Arrogance is not empowerment. We were talking about restricting. Not only restricting, you should have restrictions on the same restrictions you have for your children, you should have for yourself. Whatever you don't want your children watching, you shouldn't be watching. And my husband was saying in the beginning part of the talk that the dunya kind of teaches us that no, 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 this is grown folk stuff, that there's a little bit of leeway because you're an adult to watch or get involved in something that might be inappropriate just because you are an adult. You are entitled because you are an adult. And we don't agree with that. We don't agree with that. We think that if we think that obviously if I'm watching a lecture, my child is not going to want to sit there and watch it. If they're little, they're not interested. That's one thing. It doesn't make it inappropriate. They don't understand it. But I don't want to watch. And we are mindful that we don't want to watch anything that if our child walks in, we're embarrassed. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching us first and foremost. So that's already enough. But your child walking in, you're going to lose so much credibility. You're going to be such a hypocrite. Your child is going to look at you crazy. Your child is going to look at you crazy, and children are very, very smart. So in the beginning of the talk, that's kind of what my husband was talking about, monitoring what your children hear, what they see. And even then, back then, we were considered like such the strict parents, and only because we never believed in giving our kids no smartphones, no cell phones. We never believed in putting televisions in their room, closed doors unless you're getting dressed. We never believed in letting the dunya media raise our children or have any input or any type of influence when it comes to how we parent. And I know people may hear that and they may say, "Oh my gosh, that is very difficult." It is very difficult because you know why? Because we have to pay attention to them. That's it's extremely inconvenient, but alhamdulillah, it is rewarding. Is it foolproof? Is it going to be perfect? No, it's not. And just like the example that I give in this talk about locking your home. If you lock your home, is it guaranteed that it's not going to get broken into? Someone could still break in. Someone can break the window. They can, may Allah protect us all. I mean, however, it's not 100% guarantee, but you do it anyways. Why? Because it's effort. That's the same thing that we need to have when it comes to our children. You have to have them in a bubble. You have to have them in a bubble. You don't just give them to the world. You do not just give them to the world and you tell them, be obedient to your teacher, be loyal to these other adults. And then when you have an input that's contrast or opposite, they're going to go with whatever authority figure you gave them, whatever credible, whatever they're going to use that over you. And then now you're going to be like, oh, my child doesn't listen to me. So just like locking your door is not going to guarantee that you're not going to get broken into, but it's the effort and it's like a common sense thing. That's how we've always been when it comes to our children. And like I said, it's not convenient. My husband, of course, he works. And at the time, even now, I'm now working from home. But at the time, I was just home. I was taking online classes. So, but it's still an effort. Looking into your children's book bag, walking them to school, who are your friends. You're not going to have a life. It's okay. You're not. You're going to have, and some stuff is going to slip. It is the effort. It's the effort. Let's see. I think I put another timestamp here about the importance of your children knowing what it's like. How do you expect your children to grow to be good parents if they're not parented? You know what I'm saying? I didn't have parents. I didn't have my parents. I didn't wake up and have one parent or two parents have some goals and were invested in me. I didn't know what was expected. The assumption that people just go out into the world and they know how to have these relationships is ignorant. You have to teach your children how to even as siblings, how to get along, what to do when they disagree. You have to be your child's teacher. Okay, so I think here is where I was talking about, let's see. As far as a woman, you have women that depend on these women of the world who aren't religious, who do not worship God. Only Allah knows their heart and the core of them. However, we're not trying to mimic Mother Teresa. We're not trying to mimic religious women. We're trying to mimic women like Beyonce and Rihanna. Not to call anyone out, but we are trying to be something that we're not, and as far as Muslim women, and it's us women. You know what I mean? So and we take that same struggle and we put our children in it, and we leave them defenseless, because then they see us trying to be stylish and trying to be cool and trying to be modern, this and the other, and it teaches them to do the same thing. Being obsessed with the world, like a 17-year-old, is like, it's imbalance. You wake up and
What is this?
The quality, I'm sorry, the quality is bad. That's another reason why I wanted to kind of go back and kind of revisit. The quality was obviously, as you can tell, very bad, but I'm sure you can hear what I'm trying to say, which is it's bad enough that we're easily influenced. Our children are weaker than we are. So some of us are, I'm still young and I still got to go out, and there you have to be balanced. You have to have your friends. You have to go out every once in a while. You have to be balanced. You cannot just be a stay-at-home mom, cooking and cleaning. I'm going to acknowledge that. But your priority number one is your family. Number one is your family, especially because it's not a long time. The older they get, the less they're going to need you. They're still going to need you, but they're going to need you for different things in different ways. And so if I am just so caught up in making sure that I'm keeping up with my friends and my peers and my trying to be stylish, then I'm showing my children to be people pleasing in that type of way. And they're going to mimic me. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to if I'm putting all my attention to them and the spotlight is on them, then that's going to be the project at hand. Do you know what I mean? Like that's going to be the project. You like put your children have to be the center of the family. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you and your husband should both be, you have God, you have each other, and your job is to protect these children. That's your job, is to protect these children, and you figure out ways how to show them and nurture them and expose them, and so that when the day comes that they outgrow and it's time for them to go off on their own, they're not a liability looking at you, can't hardly read, have no people skills, do not know how to use a map or go outside without GPS, and then they're stuck with you, and then you're running around trying to ask somebody, does somebody want to marry your 40-year-old child who has nothing to contribute? Do you know what I'm saying? SubhanAllah. May Allah protect us from that. I mean, so just be mindful, like be mindful. And so looking at these other notes, I also say somewhere in this talk that before social media, before the internet, there was an obvious generational gap. There was an obvious generation gap between me and my parents' generation and then their parents' generation. Now, so back then, even your older siblings, or if somebody was 3 years older than you, it felt like they were so old when you were young. Oh, they're old. The the age gaps had more room. They were more separated. Whereas now they're too close. Before you would say to yourself, my mom, she doesn't understand. She's too old school. She doesn't understand. Now, people's mama and grandmother, they're going and getting tattoos together. They're doing the same thing together. Like it's just it's now it's there's no wise women. I know we're out there. SubhanAllah. I know I'm not alone. Not trying to say that I'm a wise woman, but I have something to contribute, and I know that I'm not alone, SubhanAllah, because I've learned even from a lot of you sisters. So, but there's not a lot anymore. You have everyone trying to be juvenile, everyone trying to be a kid, and the real kids are being neglected. The real kids are being neglected. They're lacking discipline, and they're lacking direction, and they're lacking nurturing because we are a little selfish and we're a little too distracted. And we've had these children, and we have to remind ourselves, subhanAllah, this is our obligation. Once they are grown, once you set them up and try your best to put them in a position so they can fend for themselves, then you can act retarded. Then you can dress up like Hello Kitty. You can do all that. But your first obligation is to your family. So, subhanAllah, conclusion, if you get nothing else out of this talk, is when it comes to parenting, is to give your children the tools they need in order to manage life. And my husband says somewhere in here, I apologize that my timestamps are not correct. Let's see if I get this. Where he basically says in order to at least attempt to have good Muslims to contribute to the world, you have to, let me see, because I'm gonna mess it up if I try to say it.
But um, one of the main things that you want to teach your kids above and beyond everything is just to remember Allah. And that is above and beyond the most important thing that you can teach your kids, because you teach them prayer, like we said, you teach them charity, but above and beyond the remembrance of Allah will check all of their behavior, good and bad. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that dhikr, uh, and I don't know the exact quote, but it's something to the effect of to dhikr is like jihad. So just to remember Allah in the midst of all the craziness that's going on in society today is just as much of a war is literally going to battle.
SubhanAllah. And I just want to add that 10 years later, when my kids have issues, they call us, and especially my husband. SubhanAllah, is there a dua? SubhanAllah, is there an extra fast? SubhanAllah, it's not a guarantee. You give your children these tools, and it is their decision as to whether they're going to use them, but at least they have them. You set your children up so when they go out into the world, they know how to pray. They know how to read their Quran. They don't have to have perfect tajweed, but my goodness, please do your best to give them something, especially if they're men. Especially if they're men. They have to know how to say the adhan, how to lead prayer. They have to know how to read Quran. Your daughter has to know her position as well. Set them up to where they understand that Allah loves them, Allah wants good for them, you love them. Even if you're disappointed in them, you're still in their corner. Even if they disappoint you, you're still there to help them, and you are still rooting for them, and you want to help them with resources and support. You're not giving up on your children. So, subhanAllah, Islam gives us so much. And I just hate that, especially back then, when I would try to get some advice. I'm just so glad that we trusted our instincts and that we stuck with what we knew. And no matter what, people called us strict, people called us even mean, doesn't matter. SubhanAllah, our children, alhamdulillah, they are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But wallahi, our children are now raising their children and their families similar to what we did. SubhanAllah, one example is we realized for us that public school was a horrible influence for our children. High school, a waste. High school was a waste. And so our children are homeschooled. I am not their teacher. There are online public schools for free K-12 companies out there that are way more, in my opinion, way more educational than being in school. I used to volunteer at my children's school. When I would go to the school, your child is basically sitting there and they're handing them a tablet. It's one teacher, 30 students. They're not getting individual attention. They are being exposed to other crazy kids. You don't even know where them kids been, what they know. Your kid, you find out later, like I did, that your children may have been abused or have seen something that at that moment, they didn't know it was inappropriate or abusive, not until they got older. Then they realize, wait a minute, hold them up. That wasn't right. And it's like, I know some of us cannot afford, or it's just not having the resources, but if you can, keep your children next to you. And as far as high school, our son, alhamdulillah, high school is a waste of time. Test it out early. My son's 17 years old, alhamdulillah, by Allah's mercy, he's in college. Nobody has time for that. Nobody has time for that. So, and now our older children who have children, they're like, our kids are not going to go. When they were going through it themselves, they were like, I hate this. I'll never do this to my children. When I get older, we're like, that's fine. When you get older, you do what you want with your now. And it's not our way. It's not, oh, we're right. No, 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 no. We were just like, how are we going to put you in an environment? First of all, I've been to over 12 schools myself, being in foster care. I don't know why people have these stories about public school being these great places where these friendships just, I don't know, maybe somewhere in middle America and small town America where people grow up together, and I don't know, but for the majority of us, it's not that way, and it's not even that serious. So I'm not saying that you're wrong for putting your kid in public schools. I'm saying that there are options out there. There are options. So even if you cannot have your child homeschool, irregardless, and that's another misconception, is that because your child is homeschooled, they don't have friends. Let me tell you, my children have more friends. My children who were homeschooled, majority, have more friends than my children who went to public school. I went to public school. Who do I know that I went to school with? Nobody. I don't. But where do the real friendships happen? The ones that really matter. The important ones are the productive ones. So my kids they are still involved in sports. They're involved in, and my son is part of the MSA. Mother was part of an elite basketball. My daughter was a part of tennis. Mother, when you, even with your kids hanging out with other people's kids, it has to be productive. It has to be productive. You don't just send your children and they can hang out with somebody. You don't know what that poor child is exposed to. And let me tell you, the biggest influence for your children is not so much other adults, it's other children. It's other children. That is who we need to be mindful of. So, subhanAllah, I'm going to just end this here. Inshallah, you get something of this. And inshallah, we can continue the conversation. I have another talk that I'm going to get more into depth when it comes to dating and marriage, when it comes to our children, when it comes to what do we do when they start liking each other, but they're only 16? And what do you do when your child is only 17 and they're attracted to the opposite gender? And one thing you don't do is you don't tell them just wait. You definitely don't press them and say, hey, let's know. If you know that they're like 20 or especially if they're interested, subhanAllah, protect your kid from zina. Protect your kid from zina. So we will have that conversation next time. So let me stop sharing. And thank you for listening, and join in on the conversation. Please put a comment, share, subscribe. Inshallah, we can have a live one day. I don't know. And assalamu alaikum.